That's okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the regular Board of Trustees for October 10th, 2023. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Karspeck.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Graves.
Here.
Trustee Hardy.
Yes.
Trustee Albrecht.
Here.
Trustee Murphy.
Here.
Trustee Ayers. Here. Trustee Kurtz.
We have a full board. Exciting. All right, next on our agenda is public participation. This is a chance for anyone in the audience tonight to
We were here a couple weeks ago, and during the public comments section, I asked if we could get a no outlet sign on our Osprey drive that comes down into Dante. And I'm here to say thank you. In less than 2 weeks, the town put it up. We were kind of surprised and shocked, saw it a few days ago, and that hopefully for us will help cut down on some of the traffic and congestion, because people don't know that they can't get out of there. They just head down, and we think that'll be valuable for us, as the building out of the homes finishes up. I had a couple of things that I just wanted to bring up regarding other city or other street issues. On the corner of 42nd and Heron Lakes Parkway, so it's out the north end of the development, there's a pothole that cars can disappear in. So we went to the Metro District. Metro District said, "Oh, talk to the town." So I just wanted to bring that up as something that it's just a hazard, and you can see people potentially having their cars damaged. The other on Danzante Bay Court, at 3284 Danzante Bay, there is a large settling of the asphalt, and they repaired it, I guess, a couple years ago, but it's settling significantly now. It's probably down about 8 inches, and so it's just constantly filled full of water, and at some point we think that's going to be a hazard, and especially with winter coming on, it'll freeze up and it'll stay that way. And then one other thing I'd like to request is we have a lot of little kids on our court, and is there an opportunity for us to get a kids at play or slow children in the area? I don't know what the right street signage would be, but to put something out there, because the other day we had essentially a convention out in front of the street, and there was 20 plus cars there, little kids riding their bikes, and it just is a safety concern that we just want to at least have some signage that would make people aware that there are kids out there or potentially out there. So that's what I wanted to share, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Administrator Kirk, thanks for jumping right on the no outlet. I can turn it over to you, Administrator Kirk, if you have anything to add about the pothole, or I don't know if we do.
I drove through there today. I didn't see one, so we'll ask our public works crew to go check it out.
Thanks.
The pothole.
Do we do kids at play signs under?
We haven't historically, and the reason why we might not is just then every street in town will want to, kids at play, and then once there's 1,000 of them, then nobody pays attention to any of them, right? So it's kind of that there's a unique issue there. So we would typically, I think, if we were going to put them out, and I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff, but we would typically put them in places that might have higher traffic or higher speeds than maybe on a cul-de-sac street. But that's not to say that we can't. We just haven't historically.
I do know that parents purchase the little signs for themselves and will set them outside of their driveway.
Yeah.
It's like a little kid,
Yeah,
but it's like, it is like a street sign, so it gets your attention
Yep.
that there are kids at play. So I know that might be a good
another
placeholder
option.
until something happens.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Evans. We'll look into these.
So we'll take a look at the sinking on Danzante Bay. I don't know if that area is still under warranty or not from the developer, or if it's been accepted. If it has, we'll have to go out and make a fix.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that did not sign up but wishes to speak under public comment? Okay, great. Thank you again, Mr. Evans. We can move on now to number one here is Weldari 5J Fees in Lieu Memorandum of Understanding, and we have introduced by Administrator Kirk.
Thank you, Mayor Karspeck. As I think most of the board members know, as part of the building process, we collect permit fees, impact fees, and some of those impact fees are not town fees. Like we collect a fee for the fire district to help support expansion of their facilities, and we collect fees through that building process, the building permit process for the school districts as well. Weld RE5J reached out. They have updated their fee calculation methodology. That information was provided in your packet. I believe they're here tonight. I'm thinking that is, yep. Hey guys, we met via Zoom and I never know people's faces in person and I didn't have a chance to introduce myself because I was a little late coming to the meeting. So in any case, they are here tonight to answer any questions if you have them. But they've updated their methodology and their school planning standards, and as a result, the resulting fee in lieu of land dedication that would be charged as part of the building permit process in that portion of town that is within the RE5J district. That's primarily east of County Road 7, kind of out on the far east end of town. So as development occurs out there, these new fees, assuming that the board supported these through the public hearing process tonight, would then be charged on future development in that area of town.
All right,
I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for us, and again, they're here tonight as well.
thank you. Gentlemen, do you have anything to add?
I would just say, first of all, thanks for having us. I'm Scott Nielsen, superintendent over in.
If you could come to the podium, I'm sorry.
Sure. Thanks for having us tonight. I'm Scott Nielsen, the superintendent over in Johnstown, Milliken, Weld RE5J. I think Administrator Kirk said it super well. We're just looking to update our IGA with you, and we did have a chance to go out and have an outside firm help us update what we were looking to collect. And so in your packet tonight, you see the difference between our old IGA and the addendum we're asking for you to approve this evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here too.
You bet.
Pleasure to see you in
You
person.
bet.
And one more point of clarity, our IGA, the original IGA says that the town has to hold a public hearing in order to adopt that updated fee, and that's why it's listed as a public hearing on the agenda tonight.
Perfect, thank you. Trustees, any questions for staff or the school district?
I had one.
Trustee Hardy?
I was trying to figure out how you came up with the new numbers and value, and was it just kind of an inflationary type of calculation, or was it based on what you estimate the home values to be for
It's-
the building area?
It's both those things, and let me take a stab at that, but Michael Everest here is our chief financial officer, so if he needs to fill in my gaps, he can. Our old number and the way we used to look at it had to do mostly with land that was still essentially farmland, and as we worked with an outside firm, what they challenged us is to think about semi-developed land, so land that has had some work, or think about how to develop it and get it to a place where we can take it to the next step. And that's partly what causes us to ask for a larger increase, but the other is an increase in the value of the land in general over time. Michael, how'd I do?
Very good, Superintendent Nielsen. And then also the component of the increased costs, you know, in construction.
Because the reason why I brought it up is that we have an attainable housing type discussion on our agenda tonight as well. And I was just trying to figure out if we could put this on some sort of a sliding scale based on the value of the property of the home being sold. So that a smaller priced home wouldn't have quite the expenses, maybe a home that could maybe afford to pay more because it's a $1.2 million home versus a home being stickered at $325. So kind of basing the fees based on that valuation was kind of what I was trying to get at.
Now,
Versus just a flat out rate per lot.
right, I think you can see for us, we were guided for how we're using the lot, so if it's a mobile home, if it's a single family home, or if it's a multifamily dwelling,
Yeah.
the more you start to do that, the harder it is for that developer to think about that. So, but we've gone the direction we were guided, which I think is pretty typical for most school districts, is to look at it in that model. And I think in the paperwork you have, you can see what some of the other ones, school districts around us also are asking.
Yeah, because a single family home number, I mean, that could be such a broad range in
True.
price. So it'd be really easy for a larger, it's like, oh, let's just build bigger houses to keep that cost minimal. But then the smaller homes that we want to get maybe built are gonna say, wow, that's a big fee, we're gonna have to build a bigger house to pay that fee. So,
And trustee Hardy, we in the presentation, it was just single family homes that were highlighted. We do have separate and lower per unit rates for as Superintendent Nielsen said, apartments, mobile homes, attached homes. So those typically would have a lower price point for a family to get into. So we kind of have addressed some of your concerns with that.
And it is, if I may, like when we calculate impact fees, and I'm sure that their methodology is similar, what you do is you look at the impact that type of product might have on your system, right? And so it's less about how much does it cost, and it's more about what is the typical impact from a single family home to the district. And that's based on, how many students on average might come from a single family house. You're right in that unlike a lot of, unlike a lot of other product types, single family houses do have a really wide range, and especially here in Berthoud, we have a very diverse range of product types, everything from small cottage homes that are 900 to 1,100 square feet, all the way up to big, pick your word, McMansions, right? And so you're right, it's tough to, what you're effectively doing is saying this is the average impact of a single family detached dwelling. In a really, in a bigger house, maybe with a larger family, maybe that impact is higher. In a small house with a smaller family, maybe that impact is lower, but oftentimes there are large houses with small families and there are small houses with big families. And so, from this, not to speak on behalf of the consultants that did the work, but that is a typical way to craft an impact fee based on an average impact of a particular product type.
so does staff feel like this would or would not hurt our ability to?
I don't think this will hamper our ability to bring additional product types to town or to continue to see a variety of product types be built. We did go through in our non-utility impact fees, our parks fees, public impact fees, we created a smaller house category and a larger house category. The smaller house typically on average has a slightly lower impact, and the larger house has about the same as maybe kind of an average size home. And so we did create some separate tiers. But overall, we think this is a reasonable request. We think their methodology is reasonable and sound, and
So why would mobile homes be one of the highest?
For the fact that with our demographers study, mobile homes generate basically a mobile home through his study generates one school age child, whereas a single family home generates I'd have to look, but it's around a 0.3 or 0.4 child. So it's really based off of the number of school age children that that type of housing unit we would expect to bring into the district.
Okay. Any other questions, trustees? Mayor Pro Tem.
So these prices, I guess, because this is kind of on the east side of town, what these impact fees are going to be directed towards what specifically, or do you have that currently slated?
So they would basically they would be slated to aid the district in procuring land, developing land for a new school. Depending on exactly what was needed.
Is Weld currently looking at a school on that side of 25?
Currently there's not a lot of development there.
Right.
But kind of with the projections for what the developments could be, I would think we would definitely be looking at building, probably at least an elementary school in that in the area in this part of the county.
East of 25 in Berthoud. Okay. Just making sure that, well, I guess it kind of goes to the other point, or the other question I have, and this I think is more for staff. In comparison to Thompson School's IGA, do we know what the price points are on those in terms of comparison?
in terms of the total fee amount,
Right.
this would be higher than Thompson's, but I would fully expect that Thompson will update their fees, right? Just like we update our impact fees on a regular basis, because prices change and construction costs changed, all those things. The districts do the same thing, and so this is the second update since the IGA was signed with Weld. I would expect that Thompson will do the same, but this would place their fee higher than Thompson's for now.
Okay, I mean, right now, there's not much housing development going on in that general part of the town.
In fact, there's effectively zero
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah.
You know, there have been a handful of lots that have been developed in the Serenity Ridge subdivision in the last few years, but you know, for all intents and purposes, until the Turion development chooses to move forward, that's been planned and kind of the zoning's approved for decades. You all know about that project, but when that project moves forward, it would be a significant impact to the Weld district. That one's still that one's still circling the airport, if I could put it that way.
What's the term for this IGA?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to look again for you.
Question, I don't see anything.
There may not be a term.
Is it just
I
open?
think it's open-ended until we come back
Yeah.
to you with an update.
Okay,
It's typically how they're written.
which depending on this development may very well be the case. If it takes a while, you come back again.
Yeah, we might be back before it develops, we might not be. This was a big update for Weld, cause we actually used outside support to help us think through. So we might be in a position where this lasts us a period of time.
Yeah.
So,
I just have a point of clarification, and this is just my lack of understanding on this issue, but when a school district has an IGA with the town, those funds that are being earmarked, they only go to any schools or development within that town, or is it going just back into the pot for the entire school district?
they actually go into the school district when we have a cash in lieu, a pot that we can then leverage to support district moves that we may make. And it may end up being that the next move we make is actually in Berthoud. It may not be, but it ends up, it's at our discretion. It's a school district's discretion as to how you leverage that. That being said, there are only certain things you can do with the money, so typically the money's used to prep land, so that you can then bring a building out of the ground, so.
Well, and so Loveland, we have sitting board members that represent Berthoud for the Thompson School District, so we'd have the same opportunity with Weld if we had schools developed east of the highway. Is that how am I understanding that correctly? Cause we'd want representation
It
on the
would
school
be-
board.
It would, you know, if there's a significant development, you know, in the Berthoud area, we would need to redraw our, board member, districts, you know, to encompass that. I mean, right now, there really isn't, or there's very, very few people in that, so it's a part of a very large kind of very rural director seat in our district. But if there was a significant development, we wouldn't have a choice. We would need to redraw the boundaries to make the board seats, you know, relatively equal to one another in representation.
So it would be obligatory if there were tax dollars going in from Berthoud that there would be a redrawing of the boundaries?
If there's people, so if there were tax dollars coming in, that means there would be development happening, which means there would be people there. So yes, it would.
Anybody that lives in that area of the district can run for that board seat. And so people that live in Serenity Ridge right now, like no one from town can, but they don't live in the school district. No one from like this side of town, I shouldn't say town. But you know, folks that live in that portion of town that are within that school district can run for those board seats today.
That's helpful, thank you.
Actually, to piggyback on that, how often are those school boundaries redrawn?
Is it every 10 years?
The director districts?
Yes.
It really depends on, sorry, Nate Sassano, I'm the vice president of our board. It depends on when people move to the town, right? So each seat represents a certain relative number of residents in our district. And so we've had pretty big development in my district, so my district changed quite a bit 2 years ago. So it just kind of depends on when development happens as to when.
So essentially, once a certain population cap kind of kicks in, that's when it'll trigger a redrawing of that district?
Correct, yeah, we look at it every 3 to 5 years, I would think, and we don't always change it, but we look at it about that
Other questions? Thank you, gentlemen. This time I'll open it up to the public. Open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to testify to this? Comments? Thank you, clerk. All right, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for deliberation and a vote. How does everyone feel? Sounds like mostly supportive.
I'm a little concerned about the numbers. I mean, mobile home paying the same price as a single family dwelling. That's a considerable price difference in income for those people that are living in those houses. I know the impact child-wise, but I almost feel like it's putting extra burden on somebody who's already trying to keep their housing costs low. And it's kind of discouraging that type of housing. I would just like to see more of a tiered program, kind of like what we did with our lot sizes, smaller lot with our impact fees.
Other thoughts, feelings? I don't know if this is something we can really amend. This is kind of a consultant.
This is their fee. We're just, what you're doing is approving the collection of it and the building permits.
Yeah, so it's really a take it or leave it, but Trustee Murphy?
I would throw this question out there. Are any mobile homes anticipated within the district boundaries?
No, none of the current zoning districts out there would allow for mobile homes that I'm aware of.
Anything else? Any other thoughts here?
My further comment on that wasn't really so focused on mobile homes, but just
Yeah,
creating
affordability.
attainable housing.
I think my question with that was, unless we have an interested developer, I mean, they're really looking at the maximum price point they can get.
Yeah, they
So
are.
reducing a fee wouldn't necessarily mean a reduce in housing value. Just my thoughts.
I think impact fees are kind of an eloquent solution to growth paying for itself. So if we have people moving in, they're paying for additional school resources that are gonna be needed for those families. So it makes sense to me. But I have grown increasingly leery of impact fees in general. While they provide that solution for growth paying for themselves, it's also pricing people out of homes and increasing the amount of cost that's being translated over to a future homeowner or home purchaser, because the developer doesn't absorb those costs, the person purchasing the home does. And so I'm always a little gun shy to approve impact fees. However, there will be an increase if we approve certain developments in the future of children, and the demand will be there. And so I think I'm in favor of this one for tonight.
Yeah, I'm in favor. I'm in favor as well. I appreciate you guys coming out. I think about the east side a lot. I think a lot of us do. There's a lot of, I mean, the future is Turion, 10,000 people out there, and I think schools really unite a community. And with ours, kind of, Administrator Kirk kind of hinted at it as what is town, you know, new Berthoud versus old Berthoud. It's fantastic to see you guys here tonight. Hopefully, I hear good things, so I think this will turn out really well. And I agree. I think, in my opinion, you know, we need to charge the cost, and if Turion takes a while, maybe you guys need to come back again, but it would be really nice to see at least an elementary school in that area. So not everyone has to drive outside of, I guess, the new Berthoud area. So I'm in favor as well. Anything else? Otherwise, is there a
I
motion?
do have one question for them possibly.
Go ahead.
If there was ever a question brought to fact from a developer that wanted to do some sort of project that felt like the fee was too high for their project, would they come to you guys to ask for a variance on that pricing? Or is it variable at all, or is it fixed, set in stone, no?
At this point, it would, I mean, it's a fixed
No
amount.
negotiating at all?
So what a developer will typically do is decide they wanna donate land for a school. Like Turion probably would come in and say, we have 30 acres set aside for a school. So none of the houses in Turion would pay that cash in lieu fee because they're donating land
Yeah.
for a school. So that's typically what a developer would do. If they wanna negotiate it, that's how they'll do it. We'll give you this much land versus this dollars amount. But the fee is typically set.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
in some
well,
places, I've seen like one city there was a developer that came in and he wanted to build attainable housing. And there was also land for school. So he ended up taking the land and gave part of it to the school to build a school. And on the rest of the land, he built attainable housing that the teachers could afford to purchase and live in.
That would be great.
It was something like that. So it was a great
Yeah.
partnership with the school district and the developer to bring something affordable to their city up there.
Yeah, it's cash in lieu of land dedication. So with a large development like the proposed Tyrion development, most likely that a certain amount of land could be set aside, or a combination of a certain amount of land and then the cash in lieu payment. So it's in that regard, it's flexible how it would work.
Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the second amendment to the IGA between the town of Berthoud and Weld RE5J School District concerning annexations and school site dedication or payment in lieu for school site purposes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, trustee Murphy has moved on this. Mayor Pro Tem Grace has seconded. Clerk, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
trustee Ayers,
Yes.
trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grace.
Yes.
Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
trustee Kurtz,
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck.
Yes. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
guys. Next on our agenda is the regular consent. Tonight we have the October 10th, 2023 meeting agenda, September 26th, August 2023 financial information, comp plan implementation update, and the 1927 fire engine donation. Trustees, like anything removed from consent?
Could we talk about item D just as a kind of a broad overview?
Sure,
Separately?
we'll still need to pull it.
Alright.
Okay, we'll pull number D. Anything else? I'd like to put Mr. Ward on the spot here. So we'll pull, item E to on the fire engine donation. Anything else? Okay, is there a motion to approve consent minuses D and E?
I move to approve consent agenda less items D and E.
A second.
All right, we have a motion, it's been seconded. Clerk, may we have a roll call vote on that?
Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
trustee Kurtz,
Yes.
trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
trustee Ayers,
Yes.
trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grace.
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck.
Yes, okay. Items removed from consent will be considered next. We'll start with the comp plan implementation update.
Yeah, I guess was just hoping, for a talk through by staff as to kind of what the plan is and kind of the update for the comp plan that is listed here. Just kind of like a executive overview, I guess.
Sure, Mayor Karspeck, members of the Town Board of Trustees. So what you have in the packet is an exact replica of the action plan that's in the comprehensive plan, along with in the notes column, the far right column. It illustrates where we are in process of implementation. And as you'll see, several items have already been implemented, are either in process or are forecasted for budget requests in future years, or we're so low in a priority list that they're not considered quite yet, but they're on the radar.
This is very it's really cool to see that this has been not only, thought through. The comp plan, when it was redesigned, was a massive undertaking by everybody involved. And I'm just really proud that this is not kind of fallen on the back burner. There's always projects we're working on, and to know that this is currently still being prioritized and documented so we're not losing track of that incredible vision is incredibly hopeful. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really, thank you for pulling that. Okay,
I was just gonna say compliments to Community Development Director Johnson for jumping in and moving everything forward so quickly.
Yeah.
There was a lot of staff changes, as you all know, and just done a great job in even less than a year, hasn't even been.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate that, and there's a lot of people that, Town Administrator Kirk and other people have been moving it forward, and I just got to ride on the tailwinds of other people, so.
This is awesome. I think Ann's also being modest in that She really has done a great job. I would say rather than ride the tailwind, she's like dropping in at the top of the wave right now. It's really good.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve item D, comprehensive plan implementation update?
So moved.
All right. Trustee Murphy has moved on this, Mayor Pro Tem has seconded. Clerk, we have a roll call vote on item D.
Trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
trustee Ayers,
Yes.
trustee Kurtz,
Yes.
trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grace.
Yes.
Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck.
Yes, okay, thank you. And finally, putting you on the spot was the wrong wording, I apologize, but I just appreciate you guys being here tonight.
Spotlight 'em.
1927 fire engine donation. Administrator Kirk, do you mind just briefly going over that?
Sure.
Interesting that, I guess we held the title on that?
Yeah, so the town has held title to that vehicle for quite some time, and there's been a couple of different efforts where the town kind of agreed to give the engine to the district. That never actually occurred, or to put the district's name on the title. There was an agreement in place, and then I think at one point it was kind of leased back to the district at no cost, and we just feel like we don't operate a fire department. It's a great piece of history, and they've done an amazing job of taking care of it and continue to utilize it. It was in the parade for homecoming and stuff. I mean, it's just it's a great asset to the town. We feel like the district is the right entity to own it. And so we would suggest formally transferring the title to the
Certainly.
district for them to continue to maintain and operate.
Well, Mr. Ward and other caretakers of tradition, you did a fantastic job. I'm gobsmacked by how quickly you guys have put up this expansion, this wing museum for all of our residents to see. And gosh, a year, a little over a year? Or is it almost 2 years? But either way.
Well, the planning took about 3 years.
Okay, well,
And we're hoping now to have the addition done about Thanksgiving. And you know, I don't know if you've seen the photos of it, but on the west side will be pretty much glass, where when you walk into the station, you'll be able to see both the old truck and the cart. And then it'll have a glass overhead door on the south, so walking by or driving by, you'll be able to see inside. So we're pretty proud of the units themselves. We through donations, we've put just shy of 30,000 in the cart and the old truck, and still got a few things to do on it, but we're getting close.
so the truck was in essentially disrepair, I thought, and it was kind of discovered, right, and then rehabilitated by some other volunteers.
Well, it was in pretty rough shape, and right before the centennial back in '88, we did a mass mailing throughout the entire district, telling folks that we wanted to restore this truck the best we could for the centennial parade. And we got, you know, everything from $5 bills to, I think that the most we got was like $1,000. And anyway, we ended up putting about 10,000 in it at that point, and got it repainted and so forth. So it looked pretty good, but it wasn't up to where it was when the town bought it. And then a few years ago, one of our volunteer firefighters actually left in his will a sizable amount of money to the nonprofit, and we were able to go in and restore the truck to its present state, and it's one of a kind. It's a treasure, a community treasure, and we certainly want to showcase it and preserve it. So.
Certainly, thank you. That's awesome. I just had no idea it was with the town, and you guys retrieving it and fixing up a town asset. I think it's great we're handing it over. You guys
didn't
have
know
actually
either.
done all the work.
I was meeting with Chief Charles and Battalion Chief Romero, and Chief Charles was like, you guys own the fire truck?
Yeah.
What?
Anytime anyone wants to donate to fix one of our vehicles up, that's fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I'm excited to see the opening, and I think we all are. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I have nothing else. Did anyone like to move on approving the 1927 fire engine donation?
I'll move.
All right, Trustee Murphy has moved on the 1927 fire engine donation. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I think Trustee Ayers barely squeaked that one out. So Trustee Ayers is seconded. Clerk, may we have a roll call vote on this?
Mayor Pro Tem Grace.
Yes.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
Trustee Kurtz,
Yes.
Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
Trustee Murphy. Yes. Mayor Karspeck.
Yes, okay. Consent has been approved. We can now move on to item number 3, which is the initial draft 2024 budget, and this will be introduced by Administrator Kirk.
Thank you, Mayor Karspeck and trustees. As those of you that were on the board last October will remember, we have a statutory obligation to prepare a draft budget and present it to a preliminary budget to the town board prior to October 15th of every year. Our budget cycle, as you know, we just went through a mid-year budget update back in August. And then we begin in earnest for our next fiscal year budget in September and October. What is included in your packet is kind of a rough first pass at the budget. It does not include requests from town staff departments. Those requests, we sit down next week. And that's gonna take up pretty much all of Cindy and I's week next week, meeting with the various departments in town to review their budget requests and to start to plug those in and see where those land. There are a handful of items in here that we have included that we know we've already talked about. They're minor in nature, or they're carryover expenses of existing projects that are already underway. And so this is a good quick chance to kind of say, you know, assuming that our expenses increase by some moderate amount, which is typical because of inflation and everything else, and assuming our revenues stay generally steady or in some cases maybe even decline, you know, how does that look for us financially? In general, our financial picture still looks good, but there's a lot of budgeting work yet to be done. So tonight it's an opportunity to just give you that very rough draft, the opportunity to look at that very preliminary budget. We will come back to you in November with a full budget presentation, and then in December is when we ask you to approve that budget. We're happy to talk tonight if you have any specific questions or items that you feel like we really need to be mindful of as we go through and prepare our budget request to you. But in general, as most of you know, the way that we typically approach the budget is, can we continue to fund our existing services? Can we fund the services and projects that we need to fund in order to offset the impact of new growth and development in town? And then the third step of the process is, what are the other things that we want to do as a community, and can we afford to do those? Those wants in all cases over the last 5 years have primarily come from master plans that the board of the community has already developed and approved, parks master plans or the comprehensive plan, or open space master plans, trails master plans. We're updating our water and wastewater master plans as we speak. Those will be coming to you very soon. And so that's where we get those kind of wants from. In some cases, those are very real needs as well. And so those are the pieces that will be plugged in for you to be able to see in much more detail in November. Like I said, this is very preliminary. Our budget meetings with staff are next week. We know some of the things we've already talked about that we know we need to include in the budget. And I think in most cases I could probably answer a lot of those questions tonight, but we didn't include some of those yet until we had a chance to plug it all in, see where we land, and then see where we need to make cuts. We want to be operationally balanced in all of our funds, and we want to use cash that we've saved in the bank to pay for projects. That's been our approach. That will continue to be our approach for next year as well. Cindy Leach, our 5-star finance director, is here as well. If you have technical questions or details, she's able to answer a lot of those probably better than I can. But we're both here to answer questions tonight if you have any.
Thank you. And Clerk, do you mind pulling this up just in case we do have questions? We can kind of look the line items over. Trustees, if you've heard anything over the last year or something you really want to have staff explore, this is probably a good time for them being so preliminary to kind of look into. You talked about open space and stuff like that. Any particular questions? Comments? I believe this is a public hearing, right?
Nope.
Nope, okay. We're just setting a date.
This is just us providing you with a preliminary draft budget.
Isn't there a motion here to?
Yeah. To essentially hold meetings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially, we're noticing the public for holding meetings.
Okay. Okay.
I was curious, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just a quick question. I was just curious if staff could help us understand the breakdown between expense and revenue with the new rec center. And I was just curious, looking at this, there are several different lines, so I don't wanna assume that we're still in the positive or that has not been a draining expense to the town of Berthoud, but could you quickly clarify on expense and revenue
What line?
totals on the rec center? So I'm trying to
Yep.
find it again.
4450 or something?
So the 2019 1% sales tax fund, that's Fund 52, it's the last one in the budget, cause it's the newest. That fund is where we both account for revenue and expenses associated with the operation of the recreation center. The sales tax collection and the rec center memberships are fully funding the debt service associated with the building as well as operating the facility. The facility is operated and has exceeded our expectations over the last several years in terms of total memberships and total revenue associated with daily visits and other things. The reality is, and we knew this when we built it, that we continue to subsidize the operation, and the membership fees and daily use fees and rental fees for parties and rental fees for gym space and all of those things don't fund 100% of the rec center. As you may recall, if you were part of those conversations initially, every rec center kind of accounts for revenues and expenses differently because recreation is not only the rec center. So some communities don't include any expenses associated with recreation that don't happen inside the rec center, even if their staff work there. And so the rec center ends up providing kind of free overhead in that sense. And then the general fund absorbs all of that cost, even though those folks work at the rec center. It just, it's all kind of an accounting exercise between funds. Ours is structured kind of similarly. But in general, all of the activities and programs that occur in the rec center get charged to this fund. And the ones that are kind of outdoor recreation get charged to the general fund. And then, staff that are allocated to the recreation center. Aquatics is a good example. 100% of our aquatics programs take place at the rec center. Those all go to this fund. So again, in terms of fees, membership fees, daily use fees, rental fees, sponsorships that we generated at the rec center, you'll see some sponsor banners in the gym and things like that. Those cover the majority of the expense of operating the facility, somewhere in the 90 to 95% range, depending on how you want to allocate expenses. And then the 2019 1% fund makes up the difference, and it also pays the debt service for the building.
So
Does that
essentially,
answer your question?
all the facility stuff is handled within the 1%.
Correct.
If it's not, okay.
Correct.
And what about like intramurals outside?
Intramurals outside,
the
outdoor
general fund.
recreation programs go to the general fund. Those are back in Fund 11.
Okay, and so what about the bike park? Even though they're not gonna be on site, it sounded like we have 2 employees gonna be dedicated towards that.
Yeah, that'll be general fund expense with our park staff. So our parks maintenance staff all comes out of the general fund. And the recreation center staff goes to the 2019 1% fund. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but as
And
this thing
actually
grows, don't you wanna,
So Parks and Recreation and our organization are two different departments.
Okay.
There's a Parks department and there's a Recreation department. Actually, Parks is a division of Public Works. But in some agencies, Parks and Recreation are all one department. For us, we feel like Parks Maintenance is more of a maintenance field operation. It's more closely related to streets and open space and forestry, and so those are all combined into one department. Similar disciplines, similar management needs and structures. But all of the Public Works Department is paid for either out of the general fund or like forestry comes out of the, now I'm gonna draw.
yeah,
a
that's
blank.
out of the lottery, right?
Conservation fund, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the
Lottery
conservation fund.
dollars. So, okay, either way, I guess, I'm just hijacking your question, but.
No, that's good.
We did pay for.
I guess as this fund grows, which is fantastic, it's well over expectations. I mean, I think the idea behind that tax was it's for the port, right, not just that center. I mean, the debt would be for the center,
Yeah, I
but
think,
as this thing grows, don't you wanna include more of the port stuff underneath that?
yeah, the answer to that is yes,
Okay.
especially in terms of new projects. And especially new programming and recreation staff, 100%. And then depending on how much we wanna move in there, the fund is healthy, it has a solid reserve right now. And we have some projects that we're saving up money to continue to do the port plan, right, the port master plan. But depending on how much we wanna move into that fund, you know, like we moved aquatics out of the general fund and into the 2019 1% fund, right? Cause it's all in the rec center. Some of our programming that used to be in the general fund, like our basketball programs and things like that that occur in the rec center moved into the 1% fund. So I think as that fund can sustain that, we would continue to move those recreation and parks expenses in there to take that pressure off the general fund and free up additional cash for other general fund activities.
Makes sense. Regarding the Lambert County open space sales tax, we brought that up with pickleball, kind of being used for that. Do we have any ideas this year? Could we focus on that fund?
Were you asking me? I'm sorry.
Yes,
Were you-
please,
I
I'm
didn't know
sorry.
if you're asking the other
Yeah.
trustees, sorry.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you, if you may recall, we took some of that, we took some money from that fund and others and started to create a line item where we're accounting for specific open space preservation dollars. And calling that out in the budget as this is something the town is putting money in here for. That wasn't really in the budget before. Those open space tax dollars can be used for a whole long list of things, and so it really becomes just a priority or policy decision from the town board.
And I think at least, I know trustee Kurtz wasn't here, but we put a pretty strong emphasis on open space acquisition. I don't wanna speak out of turn here, but it sounds pretty fair, okay. Okay, good, alright. We just had a mini retreat just now, okay.
But I think the answer to your question is yes, we can focus those dollars more on open space rather than, you know, outdoor recreation and some of the other things that fund can pay for.
And then for the similar one that forestry's under the conservation trust fund, is there any opportunity for a tree replacement program in that for homeowners for tree lawns?
The answer to that is yes. We have money budgeted. We budgeted $20,000 last year for tree replacement. And we have money continue to be plugged in the budget in future years, just kind of carrying that expense forward with some minor increases that are just percentage driven at this point. The Conservation Trust Fund that funds forestry also gets a transfer from the general fund of $500,000 to fund all the activities that occur in there. So the Conservation Trust Fund doesn't have enough money to pay for all of forestry, and it's a reasonable expense for the general fund anyway. But in order to account for all the expense in one place, we put it all in, Conservation Trust, and then move money from the general fund into the Conservation Trust Fund to cover the delta.
Okay.
And that this year and last year was $500,000.
Okay. And jumping over 5071 under 1104, the recreation expense, scholarships, is that for stuff like H&S for?
It is.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So we have 2,500 budgeted?
Yep,
That's enough.
those aren't super heavily used, but they do get used, and as you may recall, you referenced it, Mayor Karspeck, but maybe everybody else doesn't know. We do offer scholarships for our recreation programs. You go and qualify through H&S or House and Neighborly Services because they already have all of that data available to them. And then we can cover your, you know, if you can't afford to participate in soccer or youth basketball or those things, we do have those scholarship programs available. It's a minor expense, but that's where we account for that.
Do we have anything in utilities for the same?
We do not.
I think that'd be interesting to look at since Loveland does it with their H&S too, but that's just me.
The the utility assistance program is something we've talked about in the past, and whether or not we want to create a dedicated utility assistance program and how that may or may not work. So yeah, that's something we could talk about too as part of the budgeting process.
Because I mentioned that with our own billing, if there was a way to round up for that fee.
Oh, sure. You mean like a donation?
Yeah, like when I go on pay my bill and it's $95, I can run it up to $100 and put the overage in. So
Oh, and I take it back.
In 1115, I think there is utility assistance.
You're right. I just recalled because I had that conversation with Ginger, who's the director of the Berthoud House
You
and Neighborhood
did?
Services, just today.
Oh, good, okay. She was reaching out to
If
me.
you may recall back during COVID, we received all this money through the ARPA bill. You know, we got, I hate to use the term manna from heaven because it came from somewhere and it wasn't, it's all of our tax dollars, but nevertheless, the federal government sent everyone money. And one of the programs that we funded through that was utility assistance through House Neighborly Services. We entered into an agreement with them where we reimburse them for utility payments for Berthoud Utilities. We do that quarterly, that reimbursement. They haven't used all those funds yet, and so we would expect, Ginger asked me this morning, are we gonna be able to carry those over? And I told her I would certainly recommend to the board that we carry over the funds we already designated for them to continue to use for utility assistance. So I take it back, we do have a utility assistance program, and thanks for reminding me, Cindy.
That's great. Okay, payments for Richardson, I remember that deal. We slowly get payments, right, each year? We slowly pay them each year.
Hey, who?
Richardson,
Yes.
we're about done with that, I'm guessing.
We're getting close. I can't recall off the top of my head how many more years we have left to pay for the Richardson farm.
Okay.
But there was a deal where, and that was to buy water from them, so we entered into agreement with that property owner. We buy, I think, 1 CBT share from them a year.
Are we gonna put some of that back on the property?
Yeah, we fully intend to water that entire property with non-pot, actually.
Oh, nice, okay. Wow, that's great.
I think Trustee Murphy.
Oh, Trustee Murphy, I'm sorry.
I had a quick question, and this was being maybe an overall thing that you guys will discuss in the coming week. But I was interested in just overall opinion on overall staff compensation and benefits, especially in this environment where it's very difficult to keep people in their jobs.
Yep.
What kind of impact do you see on that overall?
So we just conducted a salary study in the last month. CML, the Colorado Municipal League, has a really comprehensive database of compensation of all cities across Colorado. And just from a broad-based methodology standpoint, what we did is we took that data, we pulled all the different, we identified what we call benchmark classifications. So, different cities call different positions different things. So you might have a town forester or a town arborist or I don't know, come up with some other tree name. But they all basically do the same thing, and so you consolidate that all under one benchmark classification. So we identified all the benchmark classifications for all the positions that we have in town currently, and then we pulled all the salary data from northern Colorado because that's really who we compete with for employees. No offense to Cortez, but we're not in competition for them with employees, right? Nobody's looking at Berthoud or Cortez and going, I'm not sure which job I'm gonna take. But we are competing with Loveland and Windsor and Fort Collins and, a lot of those communities for the same people. So we pulled the salary data from those, we ran some averages, and identified kind of a midpoint of a salary range for each of those positions, and then translated that into a broader salary range with a start and end point. What we found, we did this exact process 2 years ago. We paid a consultant to do it, and this year we said, we're smart enough to do this on our own. So Cindy and I and Jeremy, our deputy town administrator, worked together to do that analysis. What we found is that we're well below the market in terms of our total salary ranges, and that really jives with, frankly, what we've had to do from a recruitment standpoint the last year and a half. When we've advertised positions, either we haven't gotten people to apply at the rates we were offering, or we've had to offer people more than, typically significantly more than what we had identified as the starting salary in order to get them to take those jobs. And so that it is a very highly competitive marketplace. I would say on average, and I haven't actually run the average, but I know which positions are filled with which, and I know what those salary increases would look like if we made those adjustments. And it's somewhere between 9 and 15% for most positions below the market. So we do expect to make some adjustments within our existing salary budgets. We actually have the budget available to do that already. And then as we roll into next year, we'll also look at inflation, and we look at the consumer price index increase. Last year, the consumer price index was about 8.2%, but we only included a 5% cost of living adjustment for staff just because we felt like we couldn't absorb 8.2%. And the year before, we had made major adjustments driven by a different salary analysis where we were even farther below the market. So we that's a very long answer to your question, but we fully expect to make adjustments to current salaries based on market demand and updating those salary ranges, and then we would include a cost of living adjustment that would just move those whole salary ranges by whatever that CPI is. I think the last time I looked, it's probably in the 3.2% range, something like that. And then we also do have a merit increase program based on performance that typically runs in the range of 2.5%. So I would expect our salary budgets to increase next year, but a lot of the market increase we can absorb in our existing salary budgets.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was a great question. Please. The Welch Trail easement, is that the one that's on Welch going to
That's
Nielsen
the
Greenway?
drainage easement. We're trying to get a pedestrian easement over.
Okay, great.
Yeah, connecting the Nielsen Greenway to Welch.
Fantastic, we got that in there. Anything else, trustees? All right, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this? Okay, bring it back to the board.
And I'm sorry, you were right. We did suggest that you set a public hearing to approve the budget on December 12th.
I wasn't right. I was thinking of tonight.
In November, but
Thanks
you
for the
were
grace,
right.
but no, I was wrong. Thank you. Okay. Anyone like to set that?
Yeah, I move to schedule a public hearing on December 2023 at the hour of 6:30 PM or soon thereafter as practicable to consider the adoption of the 2024 annual budget and associated ordinances for the town of Berthoud and to direct staff to publish notice for the same in accordance with the local government budget law of Colorado.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Grace has moved on this. Trustee Hardy has seconded. Is there any final discussion? Clerk, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
trustee Kurtz,
Yes.
trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
trustee Ayers,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grace,
Yes.
trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck.
Yes. All right, thank you. And thank you, Director Leach, as well. Let's move on now to the last regular agenda item, and that's Prop 123, Attainable Housing Opt-in. And our planner, Ann Johnson, will be here to present.
It's only 7:30.
Here.
He's saying we gotta slow it down.
Yeah, we'll slow it down in executive session.
Good evening, Mayor Karspeck and members of the Town Board of Trustees. So the town staff has attended several meetings, several conference calls, read information about this Proposition 123. We've asked a lot of questions of DOLA, and we have found that there is very little negative impact to the town itself by opting into Proposition 123. The one benefit, because the town doesn't have a housing authority, the town doesn't have a housing department or a division. So the one benefit of opting in for the town of Berthoud is to support our housing partners such as Habitat for Humanity. They would have, if the town opts in, they would have the opportunity with some support from the town for applying for funds. And as you can see on page 1 of the staff agenda memo, Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, or CHAFA, will get 60% of these funds. DOLA then is getting 40%, and there's a list of opportunities there that are available. And then going to on the top of page 2, the funding available in fiscal year 2022-23 was $160 million, and there weren't a lot of communities that opted in. And then the funding projected for fiscal year 2023-24 is projected to be $318 million. So that can be used by different housing partners and other communities. You know, will be very competitive because buying land and some of those other items that could be an eligible expense, it will be competitive. So our obligation when we opt in is we are trying to tell the state that we will attempt to meet that 3% increase of affordable either rental units or home or ownership units over 3 years. So 9% increase in 3 years. And that turns out to be 59 or 19 point something a year. So we'll go with 20 a year. Right now, I did a poll with some of our local builders, and many of those units are actually within that for sale attainable price, and I believe that is 120% of AMI. rental has to be available to, I believe, 60% AMI. But right now, many of the units that are being constructed in certain neighborhoods would meet that 120% AMI, which is the attainable category. So in your packet, there is a list as of September 13th of those communities, counties, or organizations that have opted in. And then the next page just shows our baseline tool. I played with that as much as I could, and Dola suggested that we try to look at that and play with it as much as we could to get a number that we could live with. But this is based on the information that they'll accept if we do opt in. The state baseline is actually more restrictive than Berthoud's, and it only yielded one less housing unit. But the income level decreased quite a bit, so I'd rather keep our income level high and just with one more unit needed. And then on the next page, I apologize, but the first table is for sale. And that's the one in the left-hand column that shows the dollar amounts and the dollar ranges for the units. Then the next page is the rental range. And those are then in the right-hand, the four right-hand columns that shows how many we supposedly have in Berthoud right now per the state baseline tool. And then the following page just shows you the baseline data that was entered. So there is a letter of support from Habitat for Humanity, and the executive director, Tiffany Brody, is available also. And then I also included a copy of that Proposition 123. So at this point in time, really staff is making a suggestion that you consider opting in. The deadline to opt in is November 1st, so there is some work that staff needs to do to upload documents and our opt-in information to the state. And I am available to answer any questions that you may have on this matter.
Thank you. Planner Johnson, trustees, questions?
It's really a
Trustee Hardy.
question or a comment. But I know we have started throwing things out on things that we wanna do as study sessions. So I guess it is a kind of a question, is this something we'd wanna study further later on about creating a housing authority in Berthoud and focus on a committee and getting more attainable housing projects like this?
You asking us now? Like if the board wants
That's
to?
my question.
Yeah, I'd be open to bringing Loveland Housing Authority in too, but certainly something
It
to talk
seems
about.
like with this thing doubling in funding and not all of it's being collected, why is that? Is that because there's just not a lot of activity or?
Probably be a lot of competition this year, sounds like.
Not that there's more people involved, but you kind of have to have dedicated staff and people committed to doing that, I would assume.
I mean, Habitat would definitely, I can see that, that's our probably only one we have in town right now, that helps out. Yeah, I'd be down. I think regarding the opt-in, it makes sense, like, it's kind of a little, you know what's going on at first, you know, I didn't wanna sign into this, and then the state puts out some big housing bill later and says, well, Berthoud, you opted into this, why aren't you for getting rid of all planning, so, no, I think this is a good idea, though.
I guess I'm still trying to understand how a proposition passes and you, like, the taxpayers vote yes, and then we have to opt into it to utilize those funds. I'm trying to understand how that works.
Well, the taxpayers said that affordable housing is important, and so then the state created this affordable housing fund in response. And in order to access the funds, the town or a county has to agree to try to raise their availability of affordable housing by 3%. I don't know the political background on why they decided to do that or anything. I just know this is what's in front of us.
If I may wax poetic for a minute, I think this is the world according to Administrator Kirk, but I think that the primary reason why they want you to do that is because if you opt in formally, you're declaring that we want to continue to support and promote attainable housing in our community, so that when those projects come in and there is pushback, that you don't suddenly go, you know what, I think that the architecture of this project just doesn't look good enough to be approved, or you know, there's a water line here that I think you're gonna have to spend $3 million to make happen, right? Because you've already declared support for that. That's my suspicion, is that the state wants you to formally commit in order to get funds, so that you don't, not you, but that communities don't then try to kind of back out when the rubber meets the road. You've made that kind of formal commitment in order to go and try and access some of these funds, if that makes sense.
But there's no repercussion, right? If you don't meet the goal, like there's no.
If we
nothing bad
don't-
happens, right?
Yeah, if the first year, if we don't meet the goal, then we're just not eligible to apply for funds. And then if in year 2, we meet the goal, then we can apply for funds. And in year 3, it's you meet the goal, you apply for funds.
And if you don't, you can't apply. Yeah, it's a carrot
You
rather than
sit
just.
out for a year.
I think my question has already been answered because of those 2 questions in the comment, but as a cynical question, who and how could take advantage of us by opting in?
If the town opts in, who would take advantage?
Who could and how could they, if it's possible?
Like take advantage of us in a negative way or take advantage, okay. Well, I don't know, because if somebody said, I'm going to apply for this in order to build this affordable housing community, the town they'd still have to go through the development review process. They'd still have to meet standards in our code. They'd still have to follow all of those rules and regulations. I can't see where anybody could twist the system. However, there are people out there that try to twist the system in community development every day that we talk with on the telephone.
And, you know, I don't think in this case that somebody could use our opt-in as a way to say, well, now you have to also eliminate requirements for me and make this easier. We still have the right to impose our normal land use processes and requirements on development projects. But what I think that everyone's hoping is that we wouldn't try to impose more just to make it harder if we've all committed to opting into this program and trying to support and promote attainable housing.
So then who actually applies for it? Is it the town or is it the developer that's doing the project?
The developer would apply, but the town would need to lend some support for that application.
So like co-sign on it, basically.
I don't know about cosign.
Not financially, you know,
But they'd have to sign on as support. They'd have to.
We get like a letter of support.
And so to clarify, based on the language, the local jurisdiction maintains authority over the developments and the design elements, even if we do receive this funding.
Yes, and the town wouldn't necessarily be the recipient of the funding. It would be somebody like Habitat for Humanity. We're just saying we're opting in and we agree that obtainable, affordable housing is important. And by opting in, then we open the door to our housing partners to access those funds.
And so if Habitat accessed those funds and they created a project, received them from the state, will the state have any type of authority over that project? Or will we maintain authority over the project?
Well, for design standards and development standards, all of that, the town will maintain authority over that project. The state may put different levels of safeguards in place to make sure that the money that they're providing, you know, through that grant program or a loan program, all of the standards of that program will also be met. So the agency that receives the money will have to adhere to the granting restrictions, and then they'll also have to adhere to our development standards.
Thank you.
and I do think, you know, some of the other things the state might do with the opt-in agencies is then it also creates like a list, literally as simple as that sounds, of like, these are the communities that have committed to trying to increase attainable housing in their communities. So developers that specialize in this kind of development also know, okay, well, these communities have committed, that also means I can go and apply and access funds potentially through this fund and look at projects in those communities. So it also just kind of creates that
Incentive.
awareness or maybe an incentive, yeah.
And to that point, it could help economic development to a certain degree, businesses that wanna co-locate where, the employees could afford housing.
It's true. And we do have the executive director of the Berthoud Habitat for Humanity is here tonight. I wanna thank her for being here and kind of helping to spur that process. Maybe Ann said that before, if you did, I apologize. But
A
anyway,
two-time plug is good.
that's right. Sometimes my brain
You gotta say it
wanders,
3
so.
times for me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you mind coming up real quick?
No,
I'm sorry.
I'd love to.
Thanks.
Thank you. I do have a few notes to share if I
Excellent.
could. So Tiffany Brody, I've been the executive director just since July 6th. So brand new. And what a time to come into this and support this community with the opportunity for these funds. So I just want to thank you all for your support and consideration of increasing affordable options here in our community. Not only would it help us build capacity to do our part, but it helps every community member cross that barrier into homeownership or having a safe place to live, even if they're renting. But I'm a licensed real estate agent, I should probably disclose that as well. But it just helps them get into homes in this community. A lot of our law enforcement, teachers, et cetera, service providers cannot afford to live here. My kids, we have 7, they can't afford to buy in Berthoud, or locally in northern Colorado. So if I could share a few stats with you, again, this is a realtor and me speaking, in collaboration with Habitat for Humanity Colorado. The executive director there shared some of these stats as well. So Colorado at large, our stock deficit for housing units is equal to 176,000 units across the state, requiring 54,000 new housing units annually to close the gap. And so between 2011 and 2021, average home prices rose by 130%, which was accelerated 27% as a result of COVID, which is no surprise there. Look at the assessed property tax valuations were impacted by that as well. 6 out of 10 households cannot afford affordable at the average priced home. In June of 2021, 13% of home sales were under 250,000, whereas compared to today, 61% of the homes are 500 or above. So if we look at Berthoud specifically, this was from the MLS as of today. The average price in Berthoud for last month, September of 2023, $696,851. And more staggering, as of today, I pulled a list of all active and pending listings in Berthoud alone. And the average price resulting in $1,007,000 basically, which is staggering. So I do ask you to faithfully consider this to see what we can do in our part. And there's so much opportunity out there, education and awareness, and to bring people into Berthoud. We just want to, at Habitat, keep up with the growth that the town is experiencing and provide those options. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Yeah.
Brody. Nice to meet you. Anything else, trustees? Questions? All right, we'll open it up to the public. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak to this? All right, close it, bring it back to the board. How do we feel? Felt like we're overall supportive?
Yeah, I'm supportive of that, especially if it's can be incentivized.
Absolutely. I think we just need to require you in each development. I'm truly serious. I don't know why we have to dance around the issue. We have a golf course that they got the money, we just gotta do it. I'm serious.
Can I also say that I live there
Oh, well,
and I really endeavor to bridge this gap.
good.
It's part of my calling. I'll just say that.
Yeah, well,
Officially.
I'll bring it up under reports, but Loveland is just, they're new and out at I-25 is they're coming with affordable housing. It's not even, we're gonna give you land, it's we're putting it in along with the other, I think it's the way to go.
Yep.
Okay, sounds like we're supportive of this.
Yep.
Anyone like to move on that?
Move to support Proposition 123 and request that staff file the opt-in form for the town of Berthoud prior to the November 1st, 2023 deadline.
Second.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Grace has moved on this, Trustee Hardy has seconded. Any final discussion here, amendments? Clerk, we have a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
trustee Kurtz,
Yes.
trustee Murphy,
Yes.
trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grace.
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And thank you for what you do, Ms. Brody. All right, that concludes our regular meeting tonight. We will have an executive session. We're not taking action, are we? Or we're not gonna direction to take action. So we'll do reports next. And we'll start off with Trustee Kurtz.
Yeah, just a couple things, so, let's see. Well, first, yeah, I wanna thank Public Works for fixing the railroad crossing, on Avenue, that is awesome, so thank you, Keith and team. And I'm not sure how detailed we are to get in these report outs, but, so I live on the south side of town, and going to Ivy for elementary school, folks travel along Fifth. And I've actually heard a lot of complaints recently about overgrown vegetation and like people needing to go into the road. And so is that something that the town can look at, or is that something they have to, each, person who's offended by vegetation needs to
Over the sidewalk, right?
needs to file a complaint. Just curious, so I can pass that back to someone.
Those are absolutely things we can look at. We do have codes that require certain clearance over the sidewalk and the road.
Yeah,
And our code enforcement or neighborhood services officer does handle those
gotcha.
I would-
fairly routine basis.
I would add to that, Forester Furnace has been doing this lately and stuff,
Okay.
out in the neighborhoods, trying to talk with people. I know we had a social media post, I think.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Just need to keep banging that drum, I guess, on that issue,
Yeah.
So.
That was Fifth going to Ivy.
Fifth going on, yeah. I'm
Alright.
sure there's other
perfect.
locations. That's my world.
And I think it's, especially along school routes, we wanna make it easy for kids to walk and
Yeah.
bike to school.
Yeah, I mean, Fifth is exceptionally busy at about 7:50.
Absolutely.
And so kids and parents going into the road is not a good thing, so. Other than that, I guess, I don't know if we were formally made a decision, but I do just wanna second or third, Trustee Hardy's recommendation for an attainable housing study session down the road whenever that makes sense after we address some other matters.
Okay. Anyone else support that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Work with Mayor Pro Tem Grace and Chris, we'll get that on there.
That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Ayers.
Port didn't have a quorum
Oh.
at the last meeting, so no report from them.
Okay.
So I don't have anything specific for this, besides the seconding of the request for housing session.
Sure, okay, thanks. All right, Trustee Murphy.
Try and be brief. Oktoberfest was awesome. Was there for a few hours. I attended CML's district meeting with Mayor Karspeck, and that was very interesting to talk with the leaders around here. Well done to Keith and the staff for the crossing patch at Mountain Avenue.
In fairness, CDOT did the work, but
That's all right.
Keith has been bird dogging them for like 2 years.
And that's the point.
Don't need to do it twice as much.
Yeah, we just gotta get him to stop a train now
Yeah.
that they're promoting.
Follow-on question with that, pedestrian upgrades, not only at Mountain, but also Welch, and
Mhm.
I believe the Spartan plans have that already called out.
Yep.
Right? As for like Mountain and Welch, how much say do we have over the pedestrian crossing versus the actual like road crossing? Does that tie into 30 Mass?
None. They still have to approve anything we wanna do there. If we wanted to prioritize funds and design enhanced pedestrian crossings at Mountain and Welch, which I think would be a great idea, we would still have to go through their approval processes, cause we're crossing their right of way, with those improvements. And pedestrian crossings, at least in my experience, with UP, not BNSF, those are very difficult. I don't know how, maybe BNSF's process is a little easier. We do have them already included as part of our Spartan plans, cause we're already designing a major crossing there, and we obviously want that to be pedestrian friendly. But if we wanted to prioritize and add design money to the budget to go through that process for Welch and Mountain, we could do that as part of the budget.
I would be very supportive of that. I would want the rest of it.
Yeah, but I thought we did already. I mean, I thought RFBs were planned for Fickle. Welch and Mountain at Fickle. Wait, what, Welch and Mountain? I'm sorry.
We're talking about the
thinking-
railroad crossing.
Yeah, okay. I'm thinking C.56. 56.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Fort Collins put that tunnel in underneath it. When I was on that bike and ped ride with them, it didn't seem that hard. I mean, I'm sure they got grant money to do it, but to do an underpass, maybe that's some kind of concession we can get out of that passenger rail too.
I don't know if we've got room or money for an overpass, but.
Underpass. Oh, it's just
or
a hole in the ground.
underpass, I mean, but, any kind of pedestrian upgrades. I think
Certainly
would be
enhanced
advantageous.
at-grade crossings. Oftentimes there are gates that are required to be put in even for pedestrians. It just, I don't know BNF standards very well. I know we had to do that with UP in my prior jurisdiction. It was a very expensive crossing, but you know, I think especially in downtown where you want people to be able to walk from the east to the west side of the tracks and back and forth, I think we should consider, you know, prioritizing some design funds to at least see if we can get BNSF approval, and what does that take?
Yeah. And though that sounds crazy, I would not put a tunnel out of the question.
Yeah.
Just because of a price tag
Yeah,
on
and
it.
it's been.
So much better for
If I
Collins.
remember correctly, the railroads like not at grade crossings for pedestrians better.
Yeah.
I could see
And
that.
so they're more amenable to having those conversations
Yeah,
than
and as a
at grade
pedestrian, I
because-
don't wanna deal with it either, so I
Yeah.
think it's a win-win.
Agreed.
Oh, but look at all that. That sounds great.
Let's see, and then just a status check on water policy, when that'd be coming back along with net zero.
We have a, we have a complete ordinance to require the dedication of historical water rights at annexation. Like we talked about before, we can already do that anyway, but putting in ordinance just makes that an easier process for us. So we already have that done, and then the rest of the conversation regarding water policy was we were gonna kind of hold status quo, or at least this was the direction I took. I went back and reviewed the meeting minutes too, because I just wanna make sure I knew where we were at. But that we were gonna hold status quo, we were gonna continue to update you on where we're at with available SFEs in our bank, so that we can kind of keep track of, you know, are we, do we have enough bank to continue to support the developments that's approved? And then if we get too close to the bank kind of hitting zero balance, we need to talk about putting a pause on development or increasing rates or requiring dedication. You know, there's a lot of different ways we can handle that, but after our last study session, that was the direction that we took, was let's require the dedication of historical water rights at annexation. That's a slam dunk, I think we all agreed on. And then let's keep you updated kind of semi-annually on where are we at in our water bank, and we would intend to do that as part of the budget process. And then probably mid-year is too close to the budget, so we'll have to find another time to do that kind of midway through the first part of the year.
Thank you. That's a great thing to be appraised on.
And then the other thing was the net zero resolution.
Yep.
Brought up.
That is on our list. It's just one of those things, short-term rentals,
Sure.
oil and gas policy, net zero.
Okay.
It's on the list.
Alright. That's all I've got.
Let's tag on that real quick. So we don't know, or they've never discussed the Berthoud 160 that's green right now. It has water, what they're doing with it. The developer kind of played like he had no idea.
So because they annexed a long time ago, that the ship kind of sailed on requiring them to dedicate water.
Right. Unless we change
You
that
would
policy,
fully
right?
expect them to dedicate water, and the reason they would do that is then they get water credits they can sell to builders.
Right.
That's how that process works. So it's in their best interest, in our opinion, to dedicate any water that's been historically used on the property.
Well, I mean, unless
It's
they can sell it
possible-
for twice what they would give us in dedication money.
That's true, but there's ways that we can make that work too. And some of that depends on what kind of water's been used on the property. I actually don't know the answer to that question. And in a lot of cases, and I don't know this one specifically, but I know of other developments where this has occurred, the property and the water were sold separately, but the buyer of the property continued to lease the water to farm it until they were ready to use it. So they may not even own it. I actually don't know the answer to that question.
It was worded, yeah, in Ludlow, is that a similar, are they dedicating any of that over?
So they will be dedicating some of the water, or at least they intend to, we've had lots of conversations with them about that, but that's another case where the land was sold separate from most of the water rights. Mr. Ludlow retained most of the water that was used on that property. I've already talked to him about acquiring it. But he has no obligation to dedicate it as part of, in fact, his annexation agreement, I think, is specific that he does not have to.
So
whenever-
even if we put
whenever
in
the
an
board-
ordinance, he would not have to.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, and I don't wanna speak out of turn, but I believe his annexation agreement says he does not have to. So that was something a prior board long time ago agreed to.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay, trustee Albrecht.
I just was gonna ask for an update on the redevelopment of the Old Town Hall and Second Street corridor. I just hadn't heard anything for a bit, so I just wanted to see where we're at on that project.
We're gonna be talking to you in executive session tonight about Old Town Hall. It's one of the conversations we'll be having in executive session tonight, so you'll hear where the status of those negotiations are. And the Third Street Massachusetts project, that's kind of tied to that but independent of, we had a recent meeting with business and property owners along the Third Street Massachusetts corridor last week. Was that last week, Walt? I don't intend to sound negative, but it did not go well. From my perspective, there was a lot of support for the project in the room, so maybe that's unfair. There was some very strong opposition to the project as well.
Business owners?
Can you characterize the opposition, like?
Yeah, I mean, it was a interesting conversation. A lot of the discussion started with complaints about snow removal that had nothing to do with the project, and we spent an inordinate amount of time talking about that. I think they're valid concerns.
Sure.
It was one of those things where it's like, hey, we've been having these problems for years. And it was like, great. I see you like every other month at least. Somebody could mention that to us. And then there was a lot of talk about there's drainage problems here and all this place is a mess and why isn't the town doing something? And so then we kind of had to say, well, that's part of the reason why we're doing this project, right? We are fixing drainage problems as part of the project, but we have to regrade everything. And once you tear up the roads and you regrade everything to fix drainage, you might as well put it back maybe in a nicer condition than it was before. And then there was some comments like, hey, we think your design is terrible. And then there was other comments like, this is beautiful, we can't wait to see this happen. So it was just kind of a weird, admittedly, it was an odd meeting. Maybe that's an unfair characterization, but that's the way I took it. I think Walt kind of felt the same way. There was some real good comments and some real not good comments. That was the second meeting we'd had with that group, and our intent was to say, hey, we met with you late last year when we were kind of early in the concept phase. We got a bunch of great feedback from you. We did some design work. We took that back to the board. The board gave us some feedback. Now we've gone and refined it. We want to show you all the great stuff we've done, how we incorporated your comments. And we probably spent the first 45 minutes to an hour and a half just listening to complaints about the town as a whole. So it was just kind of, it was one of those odd meetings, but those happen from time to time.
Great,
Yeah.
thanks for your time. Yeah.
And I will say it was mostly constructive criticism, if you don't take it personally, and
Hard
so,
not to.
yeah.
Hard not to.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Active listening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
All right, trustee Hardy.
Nothing to report.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Grace.
Well, just the usual, I know Mountain and the railroad crossing on Mountain got kind of addressed, and I think the email said it was early 2024. We'll be having the entirety of that crossing replaced is kind of what we're talking about now.
That's the expectation. As I understand it, CDOT has money allocated to do the work. They submitted all their plans and everything to BNSF. BNSF said your approval process will be 9 to 12 months. No, that's not right.
Good.
Sorry, 9 to 12 weeks. Sorry, that was unfair to BNSF. 9 to 12 weeks. But by the time they get that approval, it'll be too late to do that work in a year. They don't want to tear that up and then not be able to put asphalt back down because temperatures are no good or whatever. So they're just planning to wait until spring of 2024.
Any other wonderful updates from CDOT? I know they're really, really talkative at times, but any high level notes that came out other than that one?
I did get a response. Do you mean specifically about 56 or some of the other issues we have going on?
Oh, there's never a shortage
Yeah.
of CDOT issues we
So,
deal with.
one of the issues that we've had ongoing with them is, we made a request to them, a formal request, to evaluate speeds and safety along the 287 corridor from kind of County Road 4 all the way up to the north end of town at 14. They evaluated those segments and said, not only does the design, the crash data, and the actual speeds not justify a reduction in speed, but it actually suggests that you could even increase it. Which
We need to rent a car for them and have them drive down there for a day. That's crazy. There's a lot of injuries in flipped cars on that intersection.
And their argument was, I think is absolutely based in reality, and so I respect their position. But that, the majority of those crashes were not speed related, they were people running red lights, or they were drugs and alcohol, or distracted driving. And so that's a fair point,
Sure, okay,
speeds,
yeah, not-
speeds don't fix stupid, but they also limit the severity of accidents. So that's my argument in return, but nevertheless, the roadway geometry, the intersection spacing, the speed data they collected and analyzed does not suggest that there's any need to reduce speeds through that corridor. So we did get that response back from them today. That was kind of the southern portion of the route, and they're still kind of finalizing their analysis of the northern end.
Did I hear right that the intersection, it's actually the mountain intersection is the most dangerous on 287?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I do know that we've had a number of significant accidents out there, and there was a stretch of time where it seemed like those accidents were happening all the time. And I don't know this to be a fact, but I think some of that was due to signal timing, in that the yellows didn't last very long.
Yeah, okay.
And so people were entering the intersection thinking that they had more time when they did not. That's just my own personal assessment.
They adjusted that though?
I did not ask them about that specifically. I believe that those yellow times were adjusted, just as a driver who goes through that intersection every day on my way to and home from work. I do believe those yellow times were adjusted. And I wouldn't say those were the cause of the crash. I'm not suggesting that
No, I
was
think that is-
CDOT's issue,
Yeah.
but I think there might have been something to do with that.
Yeah.
Personally, but maybe I shouldn't even say that out loud, Aaron.
If
Our
we
attorneys
need to
would
have that
probably just
adjusted, it'll
appreciate
take
my
9 to
comments.
12 months.
What was that?
Oh, if we need to have that adjusted, it's just gonna take 9 to 12 months.
In other words, let's start now. I'll tell them we need an adjustment.
Yeah, I don't know, I haven't actually asked Sergeant Williamson, what the crash data out there has been recently. Anecdotally, I haven't seen nearly as many crashes at that intersection.
Since they changed the lights there at Berthoud Parkway and 287, the crashes have become a lot less. than
Those
they
for
were
sure,
before, so
yeah.
that protected left has definitely made a significant difference in the crashes out there.
Yeah.
We're actually having more in the city area.
Okay,
we are
not good,
out
but
there, so.
okay. I mean, is that the same with 56 and 56 and 287? Just
Yeah,
go-
we're not having a ton out there. We still have a few. I mean, you're never gonna
Nothing
not
like
have
it was.
accidents at those major intersections.
Okay, so they did some great.
That's all.
Thanks, Chief.
That was it.
Any other updates from CDOT, and that's it?
I have one other thing to tack on to that. I saw the email come by, and I don't know if you guys all saw it, that we've got a new liaison for CDOT.
Jamie Grimm.
Would it be worthwhile to have her come in and chat for a little bit?
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I knew her in her last position. She really is helpful. Apparently Meade and Windsor were concerned that we were losing access to our regional transportation director for questions because she's there, but it's just a new position to help be a liaison. She's really nice. I think we should.
I'm sure she'd be happy to, we'll reach out.
Awesome.
Yeah. Really fun. Okay. I-25 update. Signage is going now for the toll lane, starting winter of this year, they'll actually start the tolling process, so people will be able to access that lane. They're just gonna test timing, so it'll actually be free. So I don't know exactly why they're doing that, because it'll adjust once you have to pay for it, but they let us know that bus staying will actually start next summer, so pretty cool to see these improvements coming around back to back here. So starting pretty soon here, we'll actually be able to use that lane. I agree with the Trustee Murphy, went to CML. It was a really great meeting, regional meeting. We're in a really good spot in Berthoud, kind of hearing everyone else's updates. beyond us in Johnstown. Johnstown's doing some pretty cool things too. Bucky's is going in. They just landed a big company that does 3D printing concrete buildings and houses. So that's the kind of exciting thing for Northern Colorado. I don't know if we'll start seeing those come into our developments, but talk about affordability, one way to do it. Just want an update on the short-term rental. I'm meeting with the golf course people that had their rentals. They reached out and wanted to meet. I felt, though I can't really make any decisions, obviously, important to have someone they could talk to face to face. So we're kind of tackling that, looking at some options.
Yeah, so the most recent email I sent you guys, we're looking to have a study session on November 7th. That's the first Tuesday of November, to talk short-term rentals. I mentioned before, I think, but our senior planner, Ton Hilbrand, who you guys met, I think at the last meeting, she was instrumental in leading and writing the county short-term rental ordinance. So she has very recent, very personal experience with crafting a short-term rental ordinance that works. She understands very much what the issues are, both on, from the property owner's perspective and also the neighbor's perspective for those short-term rentals. And so we hope to be able to bring to you a path forward from our perspective using her very recent experience at the county. That might help expedite how we handle that issue, but But anyway.
Okay, so November.
We have a pretty good path forward, maybe at least as a starting place.
Yeah, that'd be good to just, I mean, we have no, I don't wanna beat a dead horse, but we have no lodging and I think majority of these people were in line, excluding the golf course. So we don't wanna unnecessarily penalize them, especially when they're downtown and using a lot of the businesses. I'll be sending out the rail letter. I talked to the board about this months ago. I apologize for not doing that, but it'll just be letting the rail commission know our frustrations, asking for a presentation on specifically what they are doing to address the communities either not getting a station or having rail go through their community and not getting a station. Being on the board there is no plan, but I think it's important to voice our opinions. I have a retreat at the end of October, a visioning session in Pueblo, so I wanted to get this out before then so they kind of formally know where we stand. And I'll forward the letter on. If you guys have any updates or anything, just let me know back. I'll send out Friday. Another I-25 Mustang apparently is just not showing up in Fort Collins and every other stop, so people will go out there. In fact, it happened to Kristen Stevens, one of our county commissioners' husbands, and then the group tried to figure out an Uber, but it was like a 6 a.m. pickup, so it was a real hassle. Turns out from CDOT that they are not. Mustang is privately contracted out to a company called Ace Express. Ace Express is having troubles finding people with CDLs, so they upped it from $25 an hour to $30 an hour, hopefully to getting more bus drivers to fix that issue. But I thought that was pretty interesting. We can advertise something all we want, but if people get out there and suddenly the bus isn't showing up, thought that was odd that CDOT didn't give us an update. But anyway, got it from our county commissioners. And that is it. Anything else from trustees before we turn it over to staff? All right, Commissioner Kirk?
We've talked about a lot. I don't have any other specific updates for you, although we have had conversations about a bus stop at 287 and Mountain. There's a renewed interest from other parties, and not really driven by the town, so I can't take credit for that, but they've reached out to do a stop at 287 and looking for a spot where we think we can accommodate 287 Mountain and how that would work.
You mind announcing the other party? Was that Longmont? Is that the 287 Express with Audrey? So this might be a program through the state to fund us as kind of a concession, though we'd all be getting a stop.
I believe that.
I'm for it, but be leery that we're gonna get on this and Bertha's got something fantastic and it's a bus stop.
But I know it's something we've wanted for a while.
Absolutely.
Bus stop at
No, I'm not
287,
saying, I'm just saying, I think I've seen where politically this is.
Sounds like Longmont.
As much as I hate to be cynical, I wouldn't be surprised if you're right.
Longmont dealt with that RTD and then they didn't get a bus line, or they didn't get the
didn't get a
RTD
rail line.
They got a bus instead. And Longmont is still, rightfully so, very angry about that. So it's just funny that they're offering us a bus.
Yeah, it's more of a coalition, right? I've only attended one of those meetings. You've been a couple. It's a 287 coalition ran by Longmont's. There's a group there that's running it.
The
Audrey's a-
287 coalition, I think with Audrey DeBarrios is actually, I don't think is the one that brought this
Oh,
forward.
okay.
No, this one came through the TAC. No, I'm sorry, Ann, I probably shouldn't speak to this, Ann knows more about it than I do, anyway.
Who brought this forward, Ann? Planning Johnson. It's good. I'm not sorry. I don't want to be like it's great. I just
I thought I had
anything
the,
coming
I
from
thought
the
I had
States
the
here.
email handy so I could give you some better detail and I cannot find it for the life of me, so that's anyway.
So, Transfort is a
Transfort, thank
referral.
you.
Oh, that's Flex.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, Flex.
Transfort is a referral for some of our developments, and there are two right now at that intersection. And so we've started initiating conversations with them, and that's all we're at, just starting to chat.
So we initiated it then.
Sort of.
What's going
Through our
on?
referral process, we didn't reach out and say, hey, we want you to put a stop in. We said, hey, these are the developments that are going on, and they came back and said,
Oh,
hey,
right
we'd
on.
like to talk about a stop.
Yeah, well, we're paying into that program, so that's great. Thank you. Exciting. I mean, if we looked at, yeah, I guess the board set it for that corner, but Ludlow would be another good corner on the opposite side too.
Mhm.
Anything else? Administrator Kirk?
No, sorry,
Okay.
thank you.
Anything from council?
I have nothing, Your Honor.
All right, Chief, anything you wanna bring up? Anything pressing? All right, great. That concludes it. Anyone wanna enter us into executive session?
I'll move that the town board enter into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402. Do I have to say the 4EI? To determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing a strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiations. And the following details are provided: potential transfer of property, followed by a second, and sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, I do that all the time, so that's great. She reads
Second.
everything on the teleprompter.
We're just going.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Clerk, can we have a roll call vote, please?
San Diego.
Trustee Harder?
Yes.
Trustee Ayers?
Yes.
Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee Kurtz?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grace?
Yes.
Trustee Albrecht?
Yes.
Mayor Karsbeck?
Yes. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great night. We will not be taking action in this executive session.